Good morning. Commissioners, Chief Choi, Mr. Sibley, Madam Secretary, Acting Inspector Florence Yu, Mr. City Attorney Carlos De La Guerra, members of the public. Today is Tuesday, June 25th, 2024. It is 9:31 a.m. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Please let the record reflect Commissioners Suthers, Shields, and Kalancha are present, and we have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. We welcome everyone attending this morning. The Police Commission is committed to ensuring equal access to its meetings. It is requested that individuals who require the services of a translator contact the board secretary no later than the day preceding the meeting. Whenever possible, a translator will be provided. Sign language interpreters, assistive listening devices, or other auxiliary aids and/or services may be provided upon request. To ensure availability, you are advised to make your request at least 72 hours prior to the meeting you wish to attend. All public comment will be heard during item number 2 on the agenda. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. The order of the speakers will be: a speaker in this room will go first, then we will take a speaker watching today's meeting on Zoom. We will alternate between speakers in the room and Zoom for a total of 45 minutes. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or to a matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board, so you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinion shall be deemed off-topic, and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting a number of ways outlined on the agenda. Message for those attending the meeting in person. These meetings are regular meetings between the board, the department, and key stakeholders. Meetings of the Board of Police Commissioners are open to the public. The state's Ralph M. Brown Act affords the public the opportunity to be present at the meetings, hear the presentations and dialogue in real time, and provide feedback via the public comment period. During these meetings, there's a need for the board to carry out public business expeditiously without delays or disruptions. Members of the audience shall not engage in any conduct which causes an actual disruption of the meeting. Those attending in person are reminded that disruptive behavior will be cause for removal. If you disrupt this meeting, you will be provided with only 1 warning to cease disruptive behavior. If you fail to cease such behavior, you will be removed from the meeting. All attendees must be seated. Failure to follow this rule will result in a warning and/or removal from the meeting. Before we move on to item number 1, I'd like to briefly address something that we all saw occur on Sunday. There was a protest in the Pico Robertson community outside of Adass Torah Synagogue. At this protest, we saw violence erupt in images and videos taken in front of the synagogue that are both shocking and saddening. We've received hundreds of emails since yesterday morning expressing concern, fear, disappointment, and outrage at the videos shared on social media and our local and national news. I want to start by saying that the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners and the Los Angeles Police Department have a duty to uphold the U.S. Constitution and rights afforded in that document. The First Amendment affords the right to openly protest. It also affords the right to worship freely. I will echo the sentiments of Mayor Bass when she said that the behaviors we saw on Sunday, blocking a house of worship, verbal and physical attacks. You are disrupting the meeting. You are disrupting the meeting. This is your first and only warning. I will continue. I will echo the sentiments of Mayor Bass when she said that the behaviors we saw on Sunday, blocking of a house of worship.
A fucking lie! A fucking lie!
You are being removed from the meeting. Please leave the room. I'm ordering you to leave the room. I'm ordering you to leave the room. I'm ordering you to leave the room.
Shut the fuck up. Get out of my way. Get out of my way so I can move. Get out of my way so I can move. Get out of my way so you can
Leave
That's
the
how we tell
room.
you journalists, all the violence
Leave
result with
the
violence.
room.
The same Zionists that you protect.
Leave
will
the room.
This commission protects. So fuck this commission. Absolutely ridiculous. Free Palestine. That's what they
Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. I will continue.
seizure of land.
I will echo the sentiments of Mayor Bass when she said that the behaviors we saw on Sunday, blocking of a house of worship, verbal and physical attacks, intimidation, spraying of irritants at protesters are abhorrent. I would like to thank Chief Choi for his swift action to assure the Jewish community that the Los Angeles Police Department understands their concerns and that the department will work with the community, the mayor, Councilwoman Yaroslavsky, and her colleagues on the city council, as well as the state and national elected officials, to make it clear that violence will not be tolerated, not towards the Jewish community or any community in Los Angeles. I would also like to share my support for the motion that Councilwoman Yaroslavsky will be introducing today, suggesting that the Police Commission and the City of Los Angeles explore changes to First Amendment permits that would emphasize clearer guidelines and improve public safety. I welcome the partnership with Councilwoman Yaroslavsky and the City Council in the coming months on this issue. With that, I will move on to item number 1, the report of the Chief of Police. We will undoubtedly hear more about the events of this past Sunday. Chief Choi.
Thank you. Good morning, President Southers, Vice President Shields, Commissioners, Acting Inspector General Yu, City Attorney De La Guerra, Ms. Farber. So I'll start my comments today with an MSIT that we had out of Southwest Division. So on June 23rd at approximately 17:55 hours, a Southwest Uniform Patrol Unit was responding code 3 with lights and sirens to an officer's help call for a male armed with a knife at Adams Boulevard and St. James Place. The officers were traveling south or eastbound on Adams Boulevard in the number 1 lane, approaching the intersection of Gramercy Place. There was a vehicle ahead of them described as a Toyota Corolla, also traveling eastbound in the number 1 lane on Adams Boulevard. As the officers moved to the left to pass this vehicle, the vehicle unexpectedly made a left turn to proceed northbound on Gramercy. The police vehicle broadsided the turning vehicle, causing a chain of collisions with other parked vehicles. The driver of the Toyota Corolla was transported to the hospital in critical but stable condition. The officers were also transported to the hospital for complaint of pain, injuries, and minor lacerations. Both officers were treated and released. The department's multidisciplinary collision investigation team responded to the scene, and they are handling this investigation. And then moving on to the protest that we had Sunday. So on June 24th, the Adass Torah Synagogue, located at 9040 Pico Boulevard, hosted a real estate exposition for Jewish individuals who were interested in buying property in Israel. Private Jewish security was present for the event to secure the front and inside of the location, as there had been a similar event hosted in North Hollywood area in which pro-Palestinian protesters were present. The department provided a squad of officers along with 2 patrol units to monitor the location and facilitate the peaceful protest should need arise. At approximately 1200 hours, about 100 pro-Palestinian protesters arrived to the location and attempted to block the entrance of the synagogue. LAPD, along with private security, set up blocking forces east and west of the event to prevent the crowd from entering. By 12:30 hours, an additional 100 pro-Palestinian protesters arrived, along with a group of approximately 150 pro-Israelis. Protesters attempted to prevent people from attending the event, and additional LAPD resources were requested to manage the growing crowds. At approximately 13:30 hours, LAPD had a mobile field force that was able to respond to the incident. Both east and west traffic along Pico Boulevard was shut down between Crest Avenue and Doheny Boulevard. An unlawful assembly was declared and a dispersal order was issued, but both groups refused to disperse. Skirmish lines were utilized to push the crowds east and west away from the synagogue. There were fights that broke out between the 2 groups behind the skirmish lines, which were broken up by LAPD and the Jewish security forces. During this time, bear spray or pepper spray was used by a pro-Palestinian protester. At 15:30 hours, the protest group had dwindled to a size of approximately 50 while the pro-Israeli group remained at approximately 150. The pro-Palestinian protesters marched through the neighborhood to the city of Beverly Hills and then returned back about 1630 hours to the same location while being monitored by LAPD ground units. By 1730 hours, both groups had left the area. LAPD demobilized our resources, and we left the original squad there to remain at scene until the event concluded at 1900 hours. There was one arrest made of a pro-Israeli man who was in possession of a flagpole with a spike attached to it. The subject was arrested, taken to West LA Station, where he was processed and then released from custody. There were also 2 battery reports, a brandishing report, and a theft report that was completed. We are investigating the use of the bear spray or pepper spray. We have also contacted our federal partners that are helping scour video and other evidence to help identify anyone involved in criminal behavior, and that we will follow up and try to make arrests based on the evidence that we have. There were no major injuries reported, at least not to us. 2 officers were treated for exposure to the pepper spray or bear spray. Officers utilized batons and pushes and jabs during the skirmish line to move protesters. No other force was used by LAPD. On Monday or yesterday, I joined Mayor Karen Bass, Councilmember Yaroslavsky, and other leaders from the Jewish community to address the troubling incident that occurred on Sunday. Together, we exchanged ideas on how to prevent incidents in the future, emphasizing our commitment to ensuring that fear and violence do not overshadow peaceful demonstrations. I want to reiterate that violent protests will not be tolerated in the city of Los Angeles. And I believe that the meeting was productive, it was well attended, and demonstrating our commitment, our community's collective resolve to promote peace and safety. I'm going to talk about also a homicide that we had in Pacific area. So on Saturday, June 22nd, the Palms Community Group, in collaboration with Pacific Area Boosters, hosted a 3-day carnival on Venice Boulevard between Overland and Motor Avenue. Various officers from the Pacific area were assigned to the event to ensure the safety of all in attendance. On Saturday, there was 1 sergeant and 20 officers assigned to the event. At approximately 10:40 p.m., 20 minutes prior to the carnival closing, 2 senior lead officers heard a male who was wearing a hoodie yell a gang name or gang slogan. Approximately 5 minutes later, the officers were alerted by security personnel that there was a large juvenile group fighting near Venice Boulevard and Keystone Street. As officers responded to the location, multiple juveniles fled the area on foot. The officers located a 16-year-old male juvenile on the ground suffering from multiple stab wounds. The officers attempted life-saving measures until the arrival of the rescue ambulance. However, the victim did not survive his injuries and was pronounced dead at scene. Officers established a crime scene and located 2 firearms wrapped in a hoodie jacket in a nearby trash can along with a bandana. It is believed that the incident may be gang-related. Detectives from our West Bureau homicide team are actively investigating to identify the suspects in this case. And if anyone has any information regarding this incident, I ask and urge anyone to contact West Bureau homicide and provide that information. We also had a shooting and a homicide on a Metro train. So on June 21st at approximately 19:25 hours, Southwest Patrol officers respond to a radio call of an ambulance shooting at 5699 West Jefferson Boulevard at La Cienega and Jefferson, the E-line platform. Upon arrival, officers observed a male Hispanic, approximately 38 years of age, later identified as Juan Garcia, suffering from a gunshot wound to his head lying on the floor of the train. Los Angeles City Fire Department responded to the scene and provided medical treatment. Garcia failed to respond and was pronounced deceased at scene. South Bureau Homicide responded to the scene and conducted the investigation. Preliminary information indicated that Garcia was walking on the upper platform with his brother when he was approached by several male Hispanics. A verbal altercation ensued, and Garcia and his brother walked away. The suspects continued to follow Garcia, and Garcia entered the train. The suspects also entered the train. One of the suspects removed a handgun from his person and fired numerous rounds at Garcia, striking him in the head. The suspects exited the train and fled on foot. There were multiple video surveillance cameras in and around the platform area that are currently being collected and viewed by detectives. This incident is believed to be gang-related and is ongoing. I also want to talk about a fireworks buyback that happened this week. So on Saturday, June 22nd, Councilmember Monica Rodriguez sponsored her 4th annual fireworks buyback program at Brand Park and Mission Division. This was a successful event, and we collected over 254 pounds of illegal fireworks, which were exchanged for gift cards, Dodger tickets, and other gifts. The event was well attended, and we hope that it will contribute to reducing fireworks-related incidents in the city. And as a reminder, all fireworks, even the safe and sane fireworks, are illegal in the city of Los Angeles. We ask that you be a good neighbor and not use fireworks in the city. To report the illegal use or possession of fireworks, you can make an online report at lapdonline.org, or if you want to speak to someone, you can call 1-877-ASK-LAPD and make that report. And if you want to report it anonymously, you can reach out to crimestoppers.org and report it anonymously. So moving on to our specific crime numbers for the week. Violent crime at week ending June 22nd. So violent crime is up 3.5% or plus 487 crimes. Property crime is down 3.1% or minus 1,547 crimes. And our overall Part 1 crimes are down 1.7% or minus 1,069 crimes. Our violent crime arrests are up 1.4%, and our Part 1 crime arrests are up 5.3%. And I'll discuss a little bit about our homicides. So compared to 2023, the city has seen a year-to-date increase of 3.5% or plus 5 homicides, but a decrease of 18.3% or minus 33 homicides compared to 2022. Operations South Bureau continues to be our driving factor in our increased number of homicides. So South Bureau is up 27.9% or plus 12 homicides compared to 2023. Gang-related homicides have decreased citywide 35.1% year-to-date compared to 2023 and by 47.3% compared to 2022. In 2024, South Bureau accounts for the majority of our gang-related homicides, which is plus 23 or plus 47.9%, an increase from 2023. Additionally, 77th Street area has most homicides in the city with 23, while Newton has the most gang-related homicides with 10. Our victims shot, citywide, the number of victims shot is down by 63, or minus 11.2% compared to 2023, and down 174 victims shot, or minus 25.7% compared to 2022. Compared to 2023, aggravated assaults are down 1% or minus 95 aggravated assaults compared to 2022, and they're down 6.9%. And compared to 2022, they're down 6.9% or minus 667 aggravated assaults in 2024. Our robbery analysis in this area is really what is plaguing our violent crime increase for the year. Our total robberies are up 18.5% or plus 709 compared to 2023. And compared to 2022, our total robberies are up 0.6% or plus 27. The specific areas where we're seeing significant increase in robberies are in Rampart. They're up 51.9% or plus 124. Newton Division is up plus 36.2% or plus 102 robberies. Southwest is up 40.2% or plus 90. And Wilshire area is up 46.4% or plus 70. So those four areas citywide are what's really driving our increase in robberies. The top premise continues to be streets and parkways. And if you combine our smaller markets, retail stores, those robberies in those locations are up 46.8% or plus 369 in 2024 compared to 2023. So these are the areas where we're focusing our efforts. On property crime, our burglaries, as of June 22nd, our burglaries are up 4.2% or 289 compared to 2023, and they're up 1.6% or 112 compared to 2022. Year to date, our commercial burglaries have increased by 4.4% or plus 135, and they're down 5% or minus 167 compared to 2022. Our commercial burgers account for 44.2% of overall burgers year to date, and South Bureau and Central Bureau are driving areas for an increase in our commercial burglaries. Our year-to-date residential burglaries are up 4%, or plus 156 compared to 2023, and they're up 7.4%, or 279 residential burglaries compared to 2022. Residential burglaries make up approximately 55.8% of our total burglaries, and West Bureau continues to be our driving areas where we're seeing increases in residential burglaries. They're up 9.8%, or plus 133 compared to 2023. And the specific areas that are leading the increases in residential burglaries continues to be Wilshire area and Hollywood area. Our motor vehicle thefts are up 4.2%, or 429 motor vehicle thefts compared to 2023 year to date. Compared to 2022, motor vehicle thefts are down 5%, or minus 637. Valley Bureau continues to be where we're seeing our increases in motor vehicle thefts. Valley Bureau has increased 29.5% in motor vehicle thefts, or plus 802, where Foothill and Mission areas continue to be our areas of focus because of the increase in motor vehicle thefts. And our stolen vehicle profiles remain the same, with Kias, Chevys, and Hyundais being the top stolen vehicles in this city. Our personnel strength has improved slightly. We're at 8,824 sworn. Our civilian staffing has also improved. We're at 2,627, and our reserve officers remain at 396. And we've had no officer-involved shootings to report this week. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Chief. I'd like to go back to the conversation that you had yesterday. Can you speak with a little bit more detail with regards to what efforts are being made to reach across the faith-based community across the entire city?
So for the police department specifically, we are continue to work and collaborate with the Jewish community, not only in community meetings and continue to establish relationships and build trust, but specifically we're working with some of the civilian security forces that are not only security forces, but they're also community leaders within those groups, and looking at ideas, discussing ways to handle these incidents at synagogues to have better outcomes for everybody. This is not about arresting or prosecuting. This is about having better outcomes where we have an understanding of people's backgrounds and histories on both sides of this argument and having an appropriate response to it. So that's one aspect of it. We have a lot of work to do within the community to reestablish and continue to build our trust based on the events. I mean, this was a protest in front of a synagogue, which this community truly felt fear and unsafe when the protesters were dispersed and marched around into Beverly Hills, and they went through a community of primarily Jewish community members. There was fear in that residential community that was expressed to us yesterday as well. So we're trying to have better outcomes when these protests occur, but we're also trying to ensure that all communities know that we're willing to work with them hand in hand, to meet with them where they are, and ensure that we're going to do everything we can to help them overcome or address the fear that they have in their communities, to establish individual points of contacts where community can reach out to their senior lead officers. So it's not just about calling the police station and the front desk, but it's about calling somebody that they have a relationship with in the department, and that will help reduce the fear of crime in these instances as well.
So, Chief, I'm just wondering if it might not be a good opportunity also for our faith-based representatives within the department to actually be at those meetings and participate as well.
So absolutely, we had representatives from our community relations section who is part of that faith-based community at these meetings yesterday. So they were involved.
And last question is, it relates to resources, and I don't want to be a broken record, but I have to keep pivoting to Ocean View. I know that we've got at least 4 vehicles out there, perhaps 8 officers out there. Is there an end in sight for when that's going to end, so we can deploy these resources in places that we need them?
So there has to be an end in sight, because as you alluded to, we can't continue to police a private entity. We are working closely, the city family, the police department, the mayor's office, building safety, water and power, a lot of entities, city attorney's office, really this property, we discussed it before, it's in bankruptcy court. Until we get approvals to do certain things, the city cannot spend money on this property, otherwise we won't get reimbursed. So although it is a slow process, everybody that is involved is trying to get that location fortified, if you will, so people can't get in there and graffiti and do other dangerous things in there. And once we're satisfied that happens, and there's private security there as well, and that's been enhanced since we started this. Once that place is safe and fortified, then we can back out of there. But because of the public safety issue, we can't pull out right now.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Vice President Shields.
Thank you, President Suthers, and thank you, Chief, for the report. I think you covered a number of the incidences that I had on my list. And just going back to a couple of them that you discussed. First, with regards to the traffic collision, does the department currently prepare any type of report similar to kind of like a end-of-year use of force report about traffic collisions that have resulted in any injuries to individuals?
Yes, we have a report that'll summarize all of our fatal accidents, serious injury, misdemeanors, our hit and runs, our DUIs. We have those reports that come out regularly. We do not have something as detailed as, I think you're alluding to, our use of force year-end report. We do not have that.
Do we have anything that would be at least a compilation so that we know, for 2023, 2024, there's these number of accidents and this is what kind of occurred, or best practices or lessons?
Yes, absolutely. We have comparable data throughout the year.
Okay. And do we know when the next report will be coming out?
It comes out, well, I don't want to say it, at least monthly, I get it, but I can provide that to you so you know exactly where we're at.
Okay. And it may be that we want something a little bit more comprehensive so that we have a better sense of what's happening throughout the year of these types of collisions. Because it seems like they have been happening with some frequency, and just want to make sure that we're getting whatever lessons learned from these.
Sure. So anytime we have an MSIT response, I get briefed like a 72-hour brief, like a critical incident. And there's a very similar process in place where if there are concerns or issues identified, if there's deficiencies identified, those are addressed immediately, even before that whole incident is adjudicated and other steps. So we take immediate action to mitigate any future incidents like that if we see that there's an issue on our side.
Thank you. And going to the violence that broke out during the protests, understand that, in order to avoid this in the future, we're trying to build the community relationship. But when, violence on either side is unacceptable during these protests, and is there an effort to actually, we were seeing videos capturing violence that is occurring. Is there an effort to actually go in and arrest the individuals that are partaking in the violence immediately?
So I will tell you that tactically, what we found, if we try and interject ourselves during an active skirmish line or active protest where violence is occurring, we've found that it actually exacerbates the situation and makes it worse, because to try and take one person out of a group is very challenging. I'm not saying that we haven't done it before and we won't do it again, but the tactics will dictate when we do that. I will tell you that there are cameras and video equipment at all of these protests, as you see on social media, and everyone has their own side of that. We are reviewing all of those things. In this particular instance that you're referring to, we have our federal partners engaged in identifying those particular behaviors or those acts, and when we can identify somebody, we will take action. So there's a different approach to it rather than doing it right then and there, but I just want the public to know that we are going to pursue criminal action on those that were behaving criminally at these protests.
Thank you, Chief. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Kalanche?
Thank you, Commissioner. Hi, Chief. I have a couple of questions regarding two of the reports. One is in regards to the Pacific Area Boosters event. I'm imagining that it was a partnership, or is it an LAPD sanctioned event? Do we have protocols in place for those types of events when we're working with our boosters or partners? So do we have protocols, and does it include, working with like the Grid family to ensure more security or additional security? Because I'm sure we can't have, a whole deployment of officers.
Yes, so these carnivals have been going on for as long as I can remember. It's actually the boosters that are affiliated with each area or division that work with community groups to host fundraisers to raise money for the specific divisions. We are there actually patrolling it and engaging the community, and it's supposed to be a fun event. Obviously, this particular event had an incident that ended in tragedy. We do support the event as far as being out there, but again, we can't, quote, secure an entire event. This is, we make sure that there are proper permits pulled, that street closures, the community is notified, those type of things. The council office knows about these events. This particular event, I don't know if Grid partners were brought in, but I can find out for you. But I will tell you, if it's in Pacific area, there's no way that the Grid partners didn't know it was occurring. We work very closely with them out there.
Do we have anything in writing for protocols, just so that any event across the city that is somehow a partnership with our boosters or any other close partners, that everybody like looks at these protocols as part of the event? Do we have anything that?
I don't want to say no, we may have something because he's been going for so long.
And would that be like in a public engagement group, or like who would?
No, boosters are completely independent. They're a nonprofit organization.
But
Standalone.
for us, when you see it on the news and it says like an LAPD booster, the public has this possible idea that it is directly connected to us. So I think having some sort of protocols, even though it's not an LAPD event, it is somehow connected. Just having something in place. I don't know in what section it would be, but maybe we can work on something or look for.
Yeah, happy to work with you to see kind of what you're thinking as far as protocols. Again, this is, and I'll make it an extreme example, but if the boosters want to have a carnival and go to the city and pull a permit, we can't stop it unless we contest the permit. But as far as safeguards of how we or our personnel are involved in that to the extent, happy to discuss if we need.
No, absolutely. How we can support maybe for better security, or like, let's check off all these partnerships we should be thinking of, so that we do the most we can do we can't prevent any, tragedy that's not connected to us or violence that's random, but we can at least have all our organizations that we work with know, like, here are the things that you should think about. But we can work on it.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then secondly, thinking, in response to the robberies, I was actually a little bit surprised that maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but that the robberies are occurring in Rampart, Newton, and I think you said Southwest, or was it?
Southwest.
And I think you mentioned that they're like sidewalk or.
Rampart, Newton, Southwest, and Wilshire.
Oh,
And the vast majority of our robberies are occurring in streets and parkways, basically open areas.
So is that like somebody coming behind someone and robbing them, or what is?
I mean, the scenarios could be any, but it's if somebody's in an open area, whether it's a street, sidewalk, public park, something like that, and then they become a victim of a robbery.
Okay. And these are probably some of the more low-income areas of our city. Some of them, like Newton.
I I can't say that.
I mean, I want to say like more vulnerable, I would say, you know, people that are living paycheck to paycheck. So it's disturbing. So I'm wondering, what visibility are we, what's our visibility? What are we doing? Do we have foot beats? What's our strategy?
Well, we have, yes, for example, MacArthur Park is one of the areas where we see a big increase. We're in that park constantly. But also, so a lot of these, so if you remember earlier in the year, I was talking about our gun-related robberies, and we're trying to take guns off the streets, and we're continuing that effort, but we've seen that number decrease. So a lot of these robberies are now people with their head in their phone, and there's a fight over the phone. So any force, even the smallest amount of force to take a piece of property turns a theft now into a robbery. So a lot of these are crimes of opportunity. So we're doing educational campaigns with our senior lead officers,
Okay.
walking neighborhoods, be aware of your surroundings, put your valuables away, those type of things.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, just concerning. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 2 on the agenda, public comment. Madam Secretary, please call the first speaker.
The first speaker is Susan Rocha. She's not present. The next speaker, Abigail Shaniqua Hernandez.
Good morning. Number one, talking about the Commissioner Southers. If there's anything I learned from my criminal justice courses, my instructor really emphasized the word equality. There are one instance I watched you. There's an interaction between you and a member of the public. The member of the public stand up and yelling at you, Southers, why don't you remove me now, Southers? And then he yelled approximately like 10 times, and then I did not hear a word from you. For the other community members like Herman, Spindler, or something, without a warning, and then 10 seconds, they were removed. I do not know what is the reason behind it, but I do see different members of the public are receiving a different treatment from you. And I was wondering, if you are treating different members differently, how would your officers working under you, how can you make sure they are treating everyone equally? Number two, I would like to know that, based on my knowledge, every single LAPD officers are having intense protection from their union. I believe I read several LA Times report. It is almost nearly impossible to fire an LAPD officer because there's strong union protection. But why we are not offering the similar protection to the assistant chief? I know that whenever an officer having some sort of wrongdoing, they always have a board of rights. They always have certain due process to follow. You cannot just fire an LAPD officer the second day. But why that the assistant chief Labrada are not given a similar protection that every LAPD officer enjoyed every single day? I really wish that it doesn't matter you are a chief or doesn't matter you are an officer, whenever someone accusing you of any sort of wrongdoing, you have a chance to explain yourself. Just like the former Commissioner Briggs said, we live in an era where one sentence statement can literally just end your career right there. Lastly, I want to talk about myself, Commissioner. I have a basketball in my bag because I have a class later. The LAPD officer took my badminton racket away in the front gate, and then he said I may be starting a disturbance or anything. It is my 300 badminton racket. I saved more than half a year for that badminton racket. I always watch my behavior in public because I'm aware that all of my behavior are being watched.
Thank you.
Next, we have Betty Lay.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
Chief's report, agenda items, public comment, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, well, first off, I really appreciate Chief's report. And on agenda items, I support 3B or 3C, 3D, 3E. And, in public comment, some of these religious haters, they need to get a life. Apparently, they have way too much time on their hands. And how would they feel if it was their synagogue or their church or their temple? It's just not right. And I'm hoping, again, that our new selected chief of police will come from within the department. It's just very critical of that. So from that point, everyone stay safe and healthy, and I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
The next speaker, the Red Chief Hunt.
Thank you. Sellers, I want to know how you guys going to change the First Amendment, but that's a story of a different. Please send me that bill that she says so I can make sure that is correct. Chief Troy, I'm kind of concerned about Woodyard being in charge of the West Bureau and HOHO, or Office of Operations. That's a dual thing. I don't think that's a good thing. That's just my opinion. Also, I'm going back out to the Pacific Division because what we're seeing out there is a lot of like the 18th Street mentality that's going out there. That's what the shootings is over there on Overland and things like that. The boardwalk is being ran like the 18th Street gang and stuff like that. I'm currently doing an investigation out there. Sadly to say, everybody has the right to enjoy the First Amendment and be protected and have their property not stolen. We're seeing an increase of crime because we don't have community-based policing. We don't have the parents. We don't have the people involved in activities and stuff like that. And community-based policing is founded on people working. We have to get those people back in jobs in the job community so that they won't have all that free time. It's just some things that we have to correct from the people standpoint of view, but also LAPD, community-based policing, like I said, was founded on keeping the people working and stuff like that. The activities in the community are bare minimum, so we have to improve in that area. But like I said, some of the things are very sticky. I'm glad to see the correction on the MTA. I'm not citing geriatric senior citizens for 35-cent tickets, and I hope that improves. Kids and senior citizens should ride for free. I don't care how you look at it. They're not the ones that's causing the problem. The ones that's causing the problems are the middle-aged people, and the time response to those calls are very slow. So I hope we can correct that. I am the Red Chief Hunt. You guys, I ought to really start listening to what I'm saying, because if you listen, then you can correct the problem. If there's a problem, there's a solution. Have your law enforcement and people start working with the people and start finding jobs for these people so you can reduce crime. Thank you, the Red Chief Hunt.
Thank you.
Next, we have Philip Tabby.
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
A man does what he must, in spite of personal consequences, in spite of obstacles and dangers, of pressures, and that is the basis of all human morality. John F. Kennedy. I want to remind everyone here that Los Angeles Police Department employs some of the best our nation has. These are the officers that do the morally right thing. The two officers that accused former Chief Bendany Moore of directing, ordering an investigation into Mayor Bass are brave and able to sleep at night knowing they do the right thing day in and day out. Shame on Briggs and whoever ordered an investigation into those two officers who were never interviewed on the allegations that were made. I have no doubt more is still sneaking around behind the scenes. As soon as you became intern chief, Dom, John Shaw, who conducted the investigation into Mayor Bass, was promoted. Sure sounds like more was in your ear, Dom. This is just more evidence showing that Chief Bended Knee Corrupt Moore rewards those who play along with his corruption. Shaw was promoted behind the scenes. It wasn't your decision, Dom. It was the consultant. He paid back a favor. Shaw had a pending complaint when he was promoted. His promotion reeks. I did see on a recent news article that this commission clarified that the investigation into former Chief Moore is closed without formal conclusion. Wow. Instead, this commission announced the 2 officers that filed the complaint are under investigation. This is the same commission that is trying to also challenge the civilian border rights. Is it your mission to completely destroy the morale in this department? Because you're doing an excellent job. Officers will be investigated if they are whistleblowers exposing corruption. You know, once lawsuits are filed, names will be public. So this commission is somewhat violating the Police Bill of Rights since there's pending litigation. What a way to intimidate a whistleblower. Calanche, you are the last of Garcetti's appointments and need to go. You are a part of the decision on Moore's videoed and admitted drunken behavior, finding it unfounded. There is a body-worn situation where Moore was well informed from his command staff on the dangers, but Moore ignored it. I think you may have known the body-worn issues early on also, Calanche. But how was that Janet Jackson concert Saturday night with your bestie, Soft on Crime Monica Rodriguez? Your involvement with nonprofits and our corrupt city council speaks volumes. You're corrupt, Calanche. You need to go. We need an outside chief of police because the corruption within this department is sickening. If I could see it, a lot of others can see it. God bless the LAPD. Yield the rest of my time.
The next speaker, please, Adam Smith.
There's a lot embarrassing going on in here, Megan. As Errol Southers mentioned on Sunday, there was a protest at an event that was organized to sell land in illegally occupied Palestine. UN defined illegal occupation, to be clear. Multiple journalists and community members were attacked violently and pepper sprayed by Zionists and other white supremacists while LAPD watched. Chief Choi can talk about some interventions that LAPD supposedly made, but the videos show people being assaulted while his officers stand there. This violence has now been mutilated and manipulated to be labeled anti-Semitic, according to politicians from the mayor and city council members, members of the state legislature, the governor, the president, and now this commission. What, of course, these politicians' comments and press conferences have been missing quite intentionally is that these attacks and violence are continually being perpetrated by Zionists and other white supremacists. My Jewish friend was pepper sprayed and assaulted on Sunday. Not because he was Jewish, but because he's anti-Zionist. And rightfully was protesting against the sale of illegally occupied land in Palestine and rightfully protesting genocide. Multiple journalists were attacked by Zionists and other white supremacists, some of whom also happen to be Jewish. It is incredibly dishonest to keep labeling violence that happens at protests as being spearheaded by those protesting genocide. But of course, this department, in a commission led by Errol Southers, continues to excuse and enable genocide of Palestinians, as the settler colonial project of Israel is synonymous with the ongoing settler colonial project of the U.S., which LAPD is a vanguard in defending. As a human, who also happens to be a dad, I was incredibly disgusted watching children being burned to death on videos coming out of a refugee camp in northern Gaza last night after it was bombed by Israeli forces. While this is just one genocidal incident of multiple yesterday against Palestinians, one of many this week, one of hundreds in the last month, one of thousands across the last 9 months, and tens of thousands across the last 75 years, it's worth bringing up the burning alive of children I watched last night, because when Errol Southers obfuscates the truth and repeats the sanitized narratives of Mayor Bass and others, it is this genocidal violence, the tens of thousands of dead Palestinian children, the limbless and starving babies, the annihilated families and entire bloodlines, that carrying the water for Israel and narratives of its defenders enables. So while you talk about fear and unsafety, Just know that people see right through the hypocrisy. Sunday's violence had nothing to do with Judaism and everything to do with upholding and defending genocidal white supremacist violence and land theft this commission and department exists to defend.
Next, we have Audit LA.
Hi, I'd like to speak on all items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yes, hi, I want to talk about L. Ron Hubbard Way and how it's been continuously closed for a month. I guess, I know these things go through the police commission, through Streets LA, and they're being granted closures for events that don't really seem to be real events. You don't, it seems like it's more just for the people within the Scientology. And it's been a whole entire month of June. It was a big portion of May, and we're waiting to see what's happening in July. It feels to me like they are trying to get a street vacation. And if so, I feel like that the city is inadvertently becoming a party to granting these permits to give them that feel of one if they are not already, if they are in the process. If they're not in the process, I'm concerned that they will be, and I'm asking the city and asking the police commission and especially LAPD to please separate yourself from the Church of Scientology. Even I was told by officers that one of your supervisors at the location, because sometimes they work overtime, they haven't in this most recent time, but they do work with them, and their supervisors are telling them that Church of Scientology owns L. Ron Hubbard Way. They don't. The people own L. Ron Hubbard Way, and I'm asking it to be opened to the public. It's been long enough. They've been holding it, it's like hostage for over almost 2 months now, and it's time for that to end. And I also want you to look into their purification rundown processes. This occurs on children as well, and I want to make sure it's not happening in our city. This is where people are, including children, are forced to take up to thousands of milligrams of niacin. They also had to drink oil, and then they had to sit in the sauna for hours at a time. This is not recommended by any medical group whatsoever, except Scientology. And if adults want to participate, that's on adults, but I want to remind you that children cannot consent. And if I would like to find out if this is an abusive program, and if so, can LAPD please stop being guards at their events if this is going on? You need to do some research before you allow your police officers to guard, especially if they are doing something that is considered dangerous to children. So I am asking and imploring you to separate yourself from the Church of Scientology until you can adequately investigate its practices. Thank you. And get our.
The next speaker, Calvin Gadsden.
Hello there. I was here last week about a shooting that happened to me, and still no one has contacted me. Now, my point is, if I see this person who walked up and tried to kill me before you guys get him off the street, it's gonna go all bad. Now, I'm trying to come and give you guys the opportunity to get this young man off the street. That's all I have to say.
We'll have somebody come talk to you right now.
Okay.
Next, we have A. A, you're on. Okay, we'll move on.
The next speaker, Matheus Cadane.
My name is Matheus Kirana with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. At the very top, I'm speaking on all items. I see a minute. Okay, thank you. Yeah, at the very top, I'm told Errol Southers spoke about the violence at this protest on Sunday. I think, we oftentimes bring up the legitimacy of this body and kind of discussing matters of violence in the community and whether or not, this is a legitimate body. Our answer is no. And I think it's really telling when Errol Southers, who's openly a Zionist, right? Someone who taught in Israel, someone who has praised Israel's practice of profiling, who is he to speak on the violence at an anti-Zionist protest? And one of the major tools of Zionism in order to sanitize the explicit violence that we're seeing an upswell of more recently, right? This genocide, this killing of children. The way that's sanitized is by taking any criticism of that violence enacted by a state and conflating it with anti-Semitism. This is kind of a perfect case study in what we're seeing in the protest on Sunday. When we're talking about these protests, we're noting that they were in proximity to Jewish neighborhoods, that they were in proximity to a synagogue. But we've completely erased the fact that what was being protested was a selling of Palestinian land, the auctioning off of Palestinian land, a well-advertised, advertisement for this land that even advertised Anglo neighborhoods. That was a direct quote from this land. So we see this racialized violence, right, against Palestinians. And the selling off of land that is being facilitated by the extermination of Palestinians. So we have an active genocide. We have people ready to displace the people being killed or who are getting prepared to get killed. And we have a selling of that land. And we have people speaking up against murder and dispossession. And to conflate that with anti-Semitism is ridiculous. It's a tired old tactic. This has been happening for years with the LAPD and their partnership with groups like the Simon Wiesenthal Center and the ADL. This conflation has been active practice, but it's not working anymore. The general public has seen the violence firsthand, and they recognize that the state of Israel doesn't represent Jewish people. We have a lot of Jewish people protesting the state of Israel. Secondly, the LAPD is a Zionist force. They're trained by Zionists at the very least. And so when we talk about the responses to anti-Zionist protests, both at UCLA, when LAPD allowed Zionist vigilantes to brutalize students for hours on end, and on Sunday's protest, where we have ample video of Zionists brutalizing pro-Palestinian protesters, and LAPD just standing by and watching. And I think it's interesting to note that we have a history of LAPD arresting protesters, brutalizing protesters, Sunday being no exception to the brutalization bit. And yet, in these two instances in which pro-Palestinian protesters are brutalized, that's when federal intervention needs to come in. In UCLA, we see the FBI come in. In this instance, we see Dominic Choi bringing up a federal kind of intervention coming into play. In every other instance, when it's black protesters or anybody else, it's easy to criminalize. Why is it so hard to criminalize Zionists? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Steve Riley.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Let me bring you back to 2021 when Chief Bendini Moore sat in the chief's chair and gave a chief's report about what happened at the Wee Spa. Does anyone remember that? The Wee Spa, where a man in the women's section, all female, exposed himself, and he was reported to be identifying as a transgender. Now, there was a demonstration outside of that spa, and there were Christians, street preachers, and Christians that were protesting, and they were set upon by a combination of transgender radical activists and Antifa. Those Christians were attacked, they were beaten, and where was the LAPD? The LAPD should have employed good planning because people knew that event was going to happen, and keep the sides separated. You have to keep opposing sides separated so that people can exercise their First Amendment right to protest, which is guaranteed in our U.S. Constitution, as President Southers mentioned. However, at that time, I said that individual who identified as a transgender, I specifically called out that he probably had committed a sex crime in terms of indecent exposure and had a history of that. And it turned out that I was right. And he was arrested for indecent exposure, 5 felony counts, He was actually on a flyer, a wanted flyer put out by the LA County Sheriffs. His name was Darren Merager, or however you pronounce it, Merager, Darren. He had been arrested since 2006 for indecent exposure. The point I'm making is that one, people's rights have to be guaranteed First Amendment rights. Stop with the narratives that may be false. Chief Bended Knee Moore put out a false narrative that day, and he did not report the facts. Now, with regard to what's going on today, everyone has a right to protest, whether it's in front of a synagogue, a church, a mosque, a temple. They have the right to protest. They do not have the right to interfere with people's worship by stopping them from entering the location. The LAPD has to be present and there to make sure people's rights are guaranteed, no matter what the community. We have to have one standard. We have to be impartial. So that, and the first speaker was right. Some people, even in this room, are treated differently than others. Some are given one warning and asked and demanded to leave. And I agree with that. But that should be for everyone who disrupts, and the law should be enforced. Chief Choi said it's not about arresting people. It is about arresting people that commit violence. And there are so many things that need to be changed. I recommend take a look at what's on posted. I did post under Steve Riley a letter, and God bless you.
The next speaker, please, Megan.
I was late today, but I listened on Zoom as I drove in, just in time to hear Errol kick Jason out of another meeting because real accountability is frowned upon here. I heard Errol say predictably violence against any community will not be tolerated. Thank goodness I'm old enough now to differentiate between what people say and what they actually do. I saw video after video of people carrying Israeli flags, attacking people. 9 journalists were physically attacked. Errol said nothing about that. None of you did. Jewish people were attacked by pro-Israeli rioters who are also on videotape shouting racial and homophobic slurs. Errol said nothing about that. None of you did. And the impunity with which pro-Israeli rioters are allowed to carry out violence is going to get somebody killed. It is abhorrent and cowardly to continue to uphold the narrative that the demonstrators were there because it was a synagogue. There are a lot of synagogues in LA, and so why was there a protest at this one? Because that synagogue chose to host an event hawking stolen Palestinian land to be bought by Americans in violation of international law. It is a reasonable and good thing to protest. Troy, you said you were so pleased to attend a meeting with Karen Bass to address this safety issue. You neglected to mention that also in attendance at that meeting was Adam King, a host on Alec Jones's InfoWars who does media appearances with neo-Nazis. What a great way to fight anti-Semitism than by joining invite-only meetings with literal public proud anti-Semites. Listening to you talk about how LAPD doesn't like to exacerbate situations is it's literally absurd, but also completely on brand and hilarious. I was at a pro-Palestinian demonstration a few weeks ago in which we were holding signs and watching movies and erected painted tents as a symbol of the people we are demanding not be slaughtered. And LAPD, completely unprovoked, sent helicopters and 100 armed officers to kettle us in the street while they trashed all our stuff. You forcibly oppress the speech of your political opponents over and over again. You are fascists. You are racists. Shame on all of you. There is blood on all of your hands.
Next, we have Mr. C.
Good morning, all items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I saw the UCLA protests, and you guys destroyed the campus. That was obvious. The tents didn't mean anything to us. It was garbage all over the campus. That's not a protest. That's a takeover. Let's see here. It's been 1,618 days since the tearing down of a Catholic statue, Chief Choi. Catholic community wasn't looked into as the continuity with the Catholic community, because you guys want to do what? Would you say in your original thing about being careful with the communities and being meeting with communities and talking to them about the Jewish issue going on? You don't care about the Catholic community at all, really, it seems like. Our statue was torn down and allowed to be torn down. Are you guys going to use the same method to find the protesters from the Glendale synagogue protest that you used to find the people that tore down the Sarah statue in Los Angeles? Yeah, that'll be quick, won't it? As fast as you guys found the ones that tore down our statue. Let's see. So, and apparently you guys renamed Father Sarah Park, or the LA City Council allowed it to be renamed by the Parks Department, Yankers Park or something like that. I don't know. I hope a homeless encampment moves in there quick. That'll be great. They deserve it though, you know. With Karen Bass and her activist team of politicians destroying our city further here in Calizuela. And then we have, this is the month of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, not Pride Month. That's just trash. Nobody celebrates their sexual mores. Nobody should. None of us should. It's not good. As far as the new sign going up too at their park, I mean, how long is that going to last before somebody comes and graffitis it? Which they will. They always do. Or, you know, maybe somebody will tear their stuff down at some point. Who knows? LA's is a crazy place where a lot of things get to happen by our radical activist city councils and commissions, and it seems like certain groups get to have special treatment. Well, that goes back to how we're all equal, right? Equality. Well, did any of you guys read Animal Farm? I mean, some animals are more equal than others. Well, there's a reason that was read to us as kids, and we had to read it ourselves, because we're all created equal, but some have more ability than others. So you're not really equal in the same sense you guys are implying it. We're not equal in that way. Some people have a more aptitude to do things in this world than others do. That's just a fact of life. They're smarter than you are, and that's the way it works. Some are just a little bit dumber, and that's how life works. So, welcome to LA, or as I like to call California.
Jonathan Foster.
Hello, good morning, Jonathan Foster. I realize that Briggs, the Brigonometer boy, he go on and on and on and on and on. So, Halito Chimichakma, I was going to speak about suicide by cop, and you had asked how do they take care of the knife situation. So I wanted to bring up some names. Stribling, Areola. There was a guy under a bridge. There was another guy on the back of a car. There was no time for these people. The officer had to shoot. Okay, and this is different though than Takar Smith. He didn't need to be shot. Keenan Anderson, he didn't need to be tased. There were 8 officers there with Keenan Anderson. He didn't need to be tased. The Graham O'Connor Supreme Court decision is it rests on a reasonable officer. So you doing anything about figuring out which one's reasonable, which one's not? That's what we need to look at. So you can't read minds, right? And you ask what could be done. And we know this is coming up again. We know this is coming up next week, next month, right? What are we doing about it? That's what she asked. What's changing? And so one of the things I thought, these mentally ill people, aren't they assigned a chaperone? There's got to be somebody looking over those people. Next topic is the Palestinian, the Jew stuff, where the Prince of Peace is not, there's not going to be peace. There's no Prince of Peace there, that fight. There's no Prince of Peace there. And somebody swatted somebody in an SUV. There was no gun there. That's swatting. Both groups really sick. The federal government's a problem, right? And while the border is open and you guys are accepting Dreamers and DACA and all this stuff is being allowed to Special Order 40, and the black community is being just overlooked again, underfunded, where needed MLK is erased, overlooked, and forgotten, silence to this Israel problem with Ishmael and Isaac. And there's no funding. They say there's no funding, right? And then it's just a complete lie. And we look at what happened. You didn't take off for Juneteenth. You got a black president. You didn't take off for Juneteenth. And Briggs, he didn't do anything. What really needs to happen is an outgoing commissioner he can't leave. He or she can't leave until the new commissioner comes in, and it's the responsibility of that commissioner to get the next one up and running. He can't have a hole here. He went to 31 precincts. What did that do? And there should be 23 commissioners. 23 commissioners. So he went to 31 precincts. What did this do for Valentina Peralta? She's dead.
Thank you.
Next, we have caller ending 2988.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
All of them.
Okay, 3 minutes.
My name is Susan Rocha. I was maliciously prosecuted by Divine Savior Catholic Church for a crime that never happened. Under 302. This is Penal Code 302. This has to stop. This is bias. It's bogus. They make up any kind of excuse that they want to prosecute you. And there's bias in the prosecutor's office and LAPD where they'll just prosecute for any reason, even if it's not true. And it's especially true with the Scientologist protesters that are nonviolent, that they're being harassed by LAPD and the prosecutor's office for 302, which is bogus. There ain't no meeting going on. It's a big fat lie, but yet you just want to believe any religious organization that says whatever they want. This isn't right. I was prosecuted under this code. I was found not guilty by a jury. So this has got to stop. It's harassment. They can lie and they get away with it. 302 is bogus. If you're nonviolent like me and it's bogus, you should not be harassing. You should not be prosecuting for things that are not true just because you want to take the side of Scientologists or the Catholic Church, because they're that powerful against a little puny person like me, Susan Rocha. This isn't right. I beat the Catholic Church because the jury found me not guilty. This isn't right. They just get their way because they're so powerful and because the prosecutor's office wants to believe them or the LAPD wants to believe them, yet they have all the rights. You want to believe them, but they lie. They lie, and you should not believe their lies. It's just got to stop. It's a double standard. I'm prosecuted, but no, you won't prosecute them for the noise violation because LAPD didn't put in the report that it's amplified sound. Noise enforcement team refused to write a police report for 20 years against this church, Divine Savior. And then they finally write the report because Lieutenant Moffat told them to. And now the prosecutor's office won't prosecute because they didn't include it as an amplified sound system. Really? Are you kidding me? And this prosecutor just told me off and told me to shut up. The one that's working at the rejection office, they've been an attorney for 18 years in that office, who just yells and screams at me and tells me to shut up. What kind of professional is that? You know what? You can't calmly sit down and have a talk about it? Why would they take their side and be honest? You know? Look at the code. No, she thinks that she knows everything. But no, she won't look at the code, though. And
Corey Schmidt.
All right, 3 minutes. Corey Schmidt for the record. Nice to meet you. Good to see you guys. Okay, so item number B, the destruction of obsolete original records. So are we doing that? Are we deleting records? Just wondering. But on the speaking of it, how is the destruction going? You know, just curious. Second, let's see. We are getting a donation of a lawnmower for $54,000. That must be a really good lawnmower. That's all I can say. Just wondering, are we removing weeds? What are we doing? You know what I mean? So again, yeah. Okay, donation of what? 95,000 to Central. Thumbs up. Okay. Next is what for digital interview rooms. Digital interview rooms usually are right for like interrogation. I think that's what it says right here, right? Technical investigation. So, I'm imagining people in jail, having to speak through a digital device, and you can see how many glitches there are. I mean, this guy over here can pull the plug on somebody right on the dot. So, just saying, glitches. I see some failures in the judicial system there. Speaking of, let's see, in custody deaths or injury. When an inmate dies in a department jail facility, so it's kind of personal. Rings a bell. In custody, I was jumped by deputies multiple times. I was jumped by inmates as well. In fact, I remember these three guys, if it rings a bell. Jay, Sinner, and Shadow. Think about that. And they said to the other people in the fucking cell, they said, leave the door open, put toilet paper roll in there so that we can come in. So essentially, shower was open for business. So just, seeing what we're talking about here, right? But I think the next thing I have, since I've got like just a couple seconds left, is I got some detective questions, right? We're talking about warrant applications and number C or something like that. So how far does the warrant thing go? You know what I mean? How do I get access to DMV records? How do you get access to these records, right? Arrest records, mass shooting records. Where do you get these? Maybe they'll just magically appear now that I've asked. And then to finish her off, budget. We were talking about the budget. So I say more of the general fund for this department. Just making sure it's not in regards to removing the Second Amendment, aren't we? In item A.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mona M.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. First, in contrast to many, I would like to give you some kudos. I want to thank you for the obvious change that you had made to officers performing security at the events at the Church of Scientology. They have been hiring a third-party vendor, and it has made a huge difference in the interaction with the First Amendment peaceful protesters. Also, thank you for acknowledging the difference between protesting a religion, which they are not, and protesting the abuse caused by the religion. We would love to be involved in your interfaith meetings that you're talking about. Second, there have been a few instances the last few weeks of officers having to interact with people with disabilities, physical and cognitive, which is a little bit different than the mental health that your SMART teams deal with. I was at one time a DIPTAC director, Disability and Business Technical Assistance for the ADA. My colleagues and I are offering to the commission and the chief to do some disability awareness interaction training for physical and cognitive disabilities, free of charge, to the new academy recruits and for in-service training. July happens to be Disability Awareness Month. If you could provide me with contact information for either the chief or your training scheduler, we'll make that happen for you. I know Commissioner Briggs had a very large and high passion for training, and I'm hoping that somebody can carry on that torch. Thank you for your time and consideration. I yield back my time.
Thank you. That will end the public comment period. We'll now move on to agenda item number 3, the consent agenda items. We have agenda items 3A through E. Are there any comments or questions on items A through E? I do have a request for items D and E. Are there any other questions? Vice President Shields, will start with you.
Can we pull B, please?
Okay. Item 3B, Commissioner Kalanche? You're good. Okay. So we'll just take these in order. I'll move that we adopt the recommendation for board action on item 3A. Is there a second? Moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 3B is the department's report on the destruction of obsolete original records. I have Police Administrator Asif Khan. Morning, ma'am. And the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners, Chief of Police, and guests. My name is Elena Asukan. I'm the Commanding Officer of Records and Identification, and I am the custodian of records for the Police Department. Before you today is a request to destroy obsolete records, which lists boxes of original and duplicate records for police areas and divisions as specified by the record retention schedule, and the requirements for the destruction of obsolete records as specified by the Los Angeles Administrative Code, Section 12.5. I am open for any questions.
Thank you. And I did just have a couple of questions. One, want to confirm that none of these documents would be subject to any pending Public Records Act request. Is that correct?
Correct. None of them are.
And how do you go about, because I did see some investigative files being part of this list, how do you go about determining that none of these files are necessary for any ongoing criminal prosecution or investigation?
So each command reviews the records retention, each division, and they will determine if, in fact, they are still in cases or pending litigation or anything to that effect. Most of these documents are well over the record destruction period of, I believe it's 5 or 7 years, depending on what type of file. And all of them have been verified by Records and Identification, the command, OCPP, Office of Constitutional Policy and Policing review this just to make sure that they don't fall under any litigation or Senate Bill 1421 or anything, any Public Records Act.
Wonderful, thank you. And does the same apply to make sure that there are no documents within this list that would be relevant to, say, an officer adjudication of a complaint or something like that?
Correct. Complaints are indefinite, so we'll keep them indefinitely.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any additional questions for them.
Commissioner Kalanche?
Yeah, just really quick. Do we, what do we digitize? Like, is there anything what is our policy for digitizing?
So all arrest reports, all investigative reports, all crime reports are digitized, and we keep them in a repository for life. So,
so these are non-arrest or how is this different than, I guess?
Correct. Most of these are administrative files that go according to the destruction from the administrative code, the city's administrative code. So there's nothing, if there's no arrest reports or anything, any crime reports associated with these files.
Thank you.
Can I just clarify, because there are some things that are mentioned here that are like juvenile arrest packages, subpoena files, investigative case envelopes. So there are still kind of things that would be related to kind of arrest files within this, but are these just, this would be the original and there's some kind of digitized file that also exists?
Correct. These, they may be a hard copy, but they all have been digitized and stored in the repository in the department's system.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments on item 3B and there are none on 3C, I'd like to, and thank you for your report. I'd like to move that we adopt the recommendation for board action for items 3B and 3C. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. For items 3D and 3E, my only request is, Chief, if we could, We have requests or donations in those particular agenda items for renovation, upgrade, roll call rooms, interview rooms, et cetera. What I would like to see at some point, if we could have before and after photos of that work that's done. It's quite a bit of work that's done regularly, and it would be just nice to know what it looked like before, what it looked like after, and what the improvements are.
Absolutely. We can take care of that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on items 3D and E? Hearing none, I would move that we adopt the recommendation for board action on items 3D and 3E. Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 4, regular agenda items. We have a department's report. Marcy's Law, renamed, revised, right, Victim Protections and Resources, activated. Commander Ciafatelli. Good morning.
Good morning, President Southers, Commissioners. As you said, I'm Commander Marla Ciafatelli of the Office of Constitutional Policing and Policy, and I have a couple of policy updates to speak to you about on the agenda today. I'll start with the first one, which is a policy change related to our Marcy's Laws cards and an introduction of our Victim Protection Resources card. For some background, in 2008, voters passed Proposition 9, which enacted the California Victims' Bill of Rights Act. The act protected and expanded the legal rights of crime victims to include certain rights in the judicial process as well as to restitution. Subsequent to the passage of this law, officers were required to issue a Marcy's Rights card to any victim of crime that included a summary of resources available to them as well as their rights under the law. On September 29th, 2022, the governor signed AB 160 into law, which added to these victims' rights and expanded the related obligations to law enforcement agencies. Under this law, officers are required to provide a Victims' Protections and Resource card, which provides information on reimbursements available to victims of crime, such as loss of income, medical expenses, mental health counseling, home security and accommodations, relocation expenses, and funeral reimbursement. The bill explicitly authorizes that the Victims' Protections and Resources card that it mandated can be designed to be incorporated as part of the Marcy's Rights card. Finally, AB 60 was also signed into law by the governor on October 8th, 2023. This bill institutes a requirement that victims be notified of community-based restorative justice programs and associated processes that are available to them. Our proposed special order, manual revisions, and Victims' Resources pamphlet will incorporate these new legal requirements. Department Manual Volume 4, Section 203.34 will be renamed from Marcy's Law to Marcy's Law and Victims' Protection and Resources. The Marcy's Rights card has been deactivated or will be deactivated, and the Victims' Protections and Resources brochure will be activated. It will contain the Marcy's Rights information as well as the information required by both AB 60 and AB 160. The brochure will be provided either electronically via email or QR code, or if the victim prefers, a good old-fashioned paper copy. It will be provided to all victims of all crimes. Upon enactment of this policy, the information will be disseminated to our personnel department-wide. The updated pamphlet will be immediately available, and personnel will be instructed to begin using it and distributing it to crime victims beginning July 1st. And we ask that you approve this policy revision and the updated pamphlet to put us in compliance with that law when it goes into effect. And I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Commander. Any questions or comments? Vice President Shields?
I have a quick question. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Just really quick. Is this, thank you for that. This is really good to see. I just want to be reassured that we're translating to different languages.
There is no mandate in the law, ma'am, but it is in English and Spanish, and we're looking into, much like the hate crimes pamphlet, getting it translated. It's a large pamphlet, you'll see, but getting it translated into the other primary languages of Los Angeles.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice President Shields?
Thank you. And just want to confirm that the changes made to the policy are just kind of mirroring the obligations in the law. Is that correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
And will there be an effort, given how, maybe some stations have hard copies of the prior one? How is there going to be more of an education campaign to make sure that those are destroyed so that they're not accidentally given.
Yes, ma'am, we'll push that messaging out as well as the electronic version of the pamphlet for immediate distribution. And eventually it will be incorporated into a page of our IR.
Thank you.
Thank you. The only question I have is a follow-up to Commissioner Calanche. We found that through our process of community input sessions in the search for chief of police that English and Spanish is not enough. So we might give some consideration to other languages due to the demographics of the city being what they are, so we can make sure that we have the information available to as many people as possible in the language they speak.
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you, Commander. Appreciate your report. With that, I would move that we adopt the recommendation for board action and approve the department's report. Is there a second?
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Commander.
Thank you, sir.
We'll move on to item 4C. Oops. I'm sorry, 4B.
Okay, perfect.
And Commander Ciafatelli gets to stay here.
Yes, sir. And I'm also going to introduce Captain Omar Bazulto from Force Investigation Division, who will join me. We'll both be available for questions after the brief presentation.
Thank you.
The next proposed policy change we're going to discuss has been prompted by the passage of Senate Bill 519. On October 4th, 2023, Governor Newsom signed SB 519 into law. The legislative history of this bill indicates the bill was drafted to increase the safety of inmates in local jails and detention facilities, both juvenile and adult, to provide uniform oversight into any in-custody deaths occurring in a local jail facility, and to promote transparency into any related investigations and findings. The new law largely impacts our state partners, quite frankly. It creates a new position of Director of In-Custody Death Review within the California Board of State and Community Corrections, or BSCC. The BSCC supports county adult and juvenile systems by inspecting jails and detention facilities, offering local assistance, setting regulations, training correctional staff, and managing various public safety and rehabilitation grants for governments and community organizations. The newly appointed ICDR director will be responsible for reviewing any investigations of any in-custody death that actually occurs in a jail or detention facility. Although the law does go into effect July 1st, the director of ICDR has not yet been appointed. When the new director is appointed and assumes his or her duties, we will, of course, fully comply with any investigations. We currently do report all in-custody deaths to the State Department of Justice, and this policy change will add an additional required notification, as well as the requirement to provide full copies of our FID administrative investigations into jail-related deaths to the director of the ICDR. Department Manual Volume 2, Section 092.50, pertaining to the use of force review boards, has some updated language that's been added pertaining to the review of in-custody deaths, and mandates that the chair of the board ensure FID has made proper notifications to the Board of State and Community Corrections. Department Volume 3, Section 409.20 is also revised and reflects that a copy of the final administrative report for any in-custody death incident that occurs in a department jail or detention facility be provided to the Director of In-Custody Death Review. This same provision is reflected in Volume 3, Section 794.39, and pertains to the distribution of FID administrative reports. We've revised Section 238.35 in Volume 4 and also added an additional Section 238.36. These sections include the same language and were added to ensure FID makes proper notification to the Director of ICDR and provides a copy of the final administrative report upon request. And although it is done in practice, Volume 4, Section 648.14 has explicitly added a required notification to the commanding officer of Force Investigation Division whenever an inmate dies in a department jail facility. The current policy update that we are presenting today, as you can see, is narrowly tailored. It updates the relevant state agency's name. It provides additional notification responsibilities on the part of Custody Services Division and Force Investigation Division. And it also provides for an additional responsibility for FID to provide a complete administrative report to the Director of ICDR. These changes are proposed to ensure compliance with SB 519 when it does go into effect on July 1st. We anticipate and will incorporate other procedural changes in our practices to ensure compliance with all aspects of this new law and to facilitate a working relationship with the new director when that person is appointed. All divisions and sections that we anticipate to be impacted by this new law, and primarily it will be Custody Services Division, Force Investigation Division, CIRD, and our CPR unit, have been notified and are prepared to be in full compliance on July 1st. That concludes my presentation, and we're now available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Commander. If I may, just an organizational question. So your use of force review board has 5 members. Is that how it's always been? Those 5 members? Has it ever been more or less that you know of?
It's been that way for as long as I can remember. I don't know.
Yeah, yes, it's always been that way, and we
Okay.
always have a peer member on the board as well.
So my question is, if that's true, would the Director of Police Training and Education be someone that might also be part of this board and/or considered to be the alternate member when a conflict arises?
Well, the director of police training and education for us is in a role of developing training and policy as it relates to training.
Okay.
Not the actual training of that policy to our employees or how it's implemented and rolled out department-wide. So
Okay.
it's a different role.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions. Vice President Shields.
I had a question that slipped my mind with this question. Come back to me for a second. Yeah.
All right, Commissioner Calanche.
Thank you. Is the notification to BSCC in like a real-time notification, like once it happens, kind of like what we do with DOJ? So like if something happens, we have to notify them within a certain.
There is nothing in the law that gives a time limit, and we basically mirrored our requirement of 10 days that we do to the DOJ.
Okay.
We basically mirror that requirement.
Okay, thank you.
And I will say that just, this department does a very comprehensive investigation of all in custody deaths, including having that come before the commission. So all of this is just adding one additional notification to the state, but it doesn't change our protocols or process for evaluating all in custody deaths. Is that correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, I would move that we adopt the recommendation for board action and approve the department's report. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Commander, thank you for your report.
Thank you.
We'll move on to agenda item number 4C, Department's report relative to warrant application audit number 23-007. We have Police Administrator Sergeant and your staff, and if you would introduce them, please, and the floor is yours.
Of course. Today I have with me from Audit Division Lieutenant Sean Saboto, and also Police Performance Auditor Wendy Gamble, and Police Performance Auditor Sergio Seiss. And today we are presenting to you a couple different audits. The first one is the warrant applications audit, which was completed as part of the 2023 annual audit plan. In looking at the policies and procedures related to the warrant application packages, this audit tested 7 objectives in 3 primary areas. These included completion of the warrant packages, the timely processing of the warrant tracking log, and also supervisory oversight. As a quick reminder, auditors reviewed a random sample of 62 warrant application packages over a 3-month period in 2023. The report shows that the department received 90 to 100% compliance in all of the areas but 3, and these 3 areas included the commanding officer or their designee reviewing and approving the search warrant's tactical operations plan prior to the warrant being served. That received 77%. The second is if the search warrant number was documented on the first page of the tactical operations plan and the warrant addendum, that received 79%. And the third was whether the commanding officer reviewed and signed off on the TAC Ops plan after the search warrant was served. That was 81%. Audit Division met with the Office of Operations, who addressed these issues through training and were also in general agreement with the audit's findings. And representatives from OO are also here if the board has any additional questions.
Thank you. The only question I have is there any particular reason, or do we always select July 1 through September 30 of a particular year?
No, we don't always select the same time period. So it just depends on when the objectives are approved by OCPP, and then we try to make it the most recent.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I had a couple questions, and this might be a question more for the chief to give us a little bit of background or understanding of some of these requirements. Some of these seem a little kind of like ticky-tack, like make sure you're signing page 1 and 6, and like what are we really getting at, and is there some potential for streamlining some of these requirements?
So I think having the warrant number recorded on all the documents is just, quite frankly, for tracking purposes. But I will tell you the oversight portion of this audit where the commanding officer needs to initial that he or she reviewed the ops plan and then afterwards reviewed the post brief that what happened, how things turned out, what they gained. That is a command and control issue to me, to the department. And oftentimes, well, we've seen this in categorical use of force boards where an operation is executed and something doesn't go as planned or the plan was deficient. And we, all of us collectively, want to know, well, who approved this plan? And there were some deficiencies identified, so why wasn't it caught? It's an accountability measure. And so I support that these topics should still continue.
Thank you for that clarification. It's always good to know kind of like the reasons why we're doing it as opposed to us being just very check the box, like did this happen or not? So I appreciate that. I think that's the biggest question I had.
Thank you. Commissioner Calanche?
Yes, thank you. For my own awareness, we selected 288, that's for this time period. Sorry, let me take that back. There's 288 total for the time period, and we selected 62. So I wanted to know like what percentage the 62 was, but, so I'm assuming that the 288 is for that quarter or that time period. So there's about 1,200 warrants, would that be correct? Warrant packages per year?
It was for that time period.
I think it's July
And then
through
the
September
62,
was like
yeah,
288
July 1st
and
through
the
September
sample
30th.
size was 62. Just so that I know like what percentage we're sampling.
Right. Sergio Sais. Yes, so we take that audit period as Ms. Sargent stated to try to make it as close as possible to the timeframe that we're looking at right now. And we'll see how many audits were, how many warrants were conducted during that time period. In this case, as you said, it was 288. So I can't say that you can actually extrapolate that to a larger period of time, right? So we pick that period, and then based on our resources, we're able to look at a certain number of audits. And so we do use a sample size that allows us to conduct the audit for that particular topic.
Would you say that there's about 1,200 or so guesstimate?
It would just be a guess, ma'am. Yeah, it would just be a guess, because I said those are the ones that were available for that period, and a lot of it depends on how many are actually served, how long it takes them to complete the process, when the search warrants are finalized, and then we're able to obtain. So I would hesitate to extrapolate out for a fuller
I'm just
period of
curious just to, for my own understanding of like how many we actually conduct.
We can certainly get you that
Definitely get you that
information.
number and
Yeah.
Okay,
forward that.
that would be great, thank you. That was it, thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, I've moved that we adopt the recommendation for board action. Is there a second?
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will now move on to item 4D.
Good morning. I'm glad to share with you this morning a brief overview of the Juvenile Detention Procedures Audit, which was conducted in accordance with the annual audit plan for 2024. Now, in looking at the policies and procedures related to juvenile detentions, this audit tested 6 objectives in 3 primary areas, which include detentions, the right to telephone calls, the advisement of rights. Auditors reviewed a random sample of 84 juvenile arrest packages over a 3-month period. This was October to December of 2023. The report revealed the department received 90 to 100% compliance in all but 2 areas. Those 2 areas involved objective number 2, which was the right to telephone calls, and specifically the timeliness of advisement of a right to a telephone call, and the proper documentation of telephone calls made by the juveniles. Audit Division met with Office of Operations, who has addressed these issues through training, and we're in general agreement with the findings. Representatives from Office of Operations are also here if the board has any additional questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on the temporary detention of juveniles department at department facilities?
I'd like to hear from Office of Operations as to how they're gonna kind of resolve, given the very low percentages. I wouldn't say very low, but lower percentages than we like to see in an audit.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, President, Chief, Director, Inspector General. On. Okay, can everybody hear me now? Good morning, everyone. So I am Commander Gisela Espinoza, assigned to the Office of Operations as the Department Homeless Coordinator, and I am acting for the Assistant to the Director, Office of Operations. So I reviewed the correspondence relative to this audit, and we concluded that there was a project generated by the Office of Operations requesting results to other inspections that the divisions are doing across the 4 bureaus to ensure the accountability. The field notebook dividers with the outline procedures for juvenile detentions was shared, as well as the temporary detention of juveniles in department facilities directive, as well as the manual sections, Administrative Order 11, which talks about the notifications to the parents, and Special Order number 20, the juvenile arrest supplemental report. And in all these directives, we have embedded the policy that pertains to making proper notifications to the parent or guardian, and making sure that we document our efforts in terms of the oversight of that juvenile, whether they are secure or non-secure detention in our facilities. The overall project response is due back to us on July 8th, and we have established additional 12 dates throughout the year for where we are going to receive updates from the bureaus as to progress. We have also shared these results and the audit findings with the bureau inspection teams and the assistant commanding officers, so that and the bureau commanding officers, so that they too can maintain oversight of this process and make sure that it receives the attention it deserves and is warranted by law.
Thank you, Commander. I think it might be useful for public who's watching this session to explain the difference between secure and non-secure.
Okay, so a secured juvenile is someone who is brought into the station with association to a crime. That person, the process is that person would be presented to the watch commander. They would be logged into the secure detention log, and it would warrant 30-minute checks of that individual. They would be placed in a room, not handcuffed, with access to a officer or a sworn member of the department, a detective, a supervisor, to make sure that their needs are met while they are in custody. The maximum time limit for that allows us to keep that juvenile in custody is 6 hours, and that's for a secure detention. A non-secure detention is a juvenile who is age 14 or less, that is incorrigible or has truancy issues that is not related to a criminal offense. Those individuals are non-secured. They are documented in a separate log. They are also presented to the watch commander. The oversight is the same, but we make sure that they are not handcuffed, they are not placed in a room, and that they have an officer with them at all times to tend to their needs while they're in our custody. The 6-hour maximum time limit also applies to non-secured juveniles.
Th-
And
th-
one is relative to 601 Welfare and Institutions Code, and the other one, the criminal offense, is under 602 Welfare and Institutions Code.
Thank you for that excellent explanation. I think it's necessary.
Thank you, sir.
Are there any questions or comments regarding this particular report or audit?
I just have a follow-up.
Yes, ma'am.
Who is responsible, excuse me, for making sure that the juvenile has access to telephone call?
The officers, the watch commanders, it is a chain of command matter. The watch commander has the overall responsibility to make sure that we are complying with our policies, procedures, and practices in terms of juveniles in our custody. But it is the officers that are responsible to make sure that that occurs and that it occurs within a timely manner. So 1 to 2 phone calls within the first hour. 1 call has to be to a parent or a caretaker, and then for a maximum of 3 calls within the 3 hours that they are there. If that does not occur, there has to be a rationale justification documented in the appropriate form, and the watch commander should be made aware of that. I know that that occurred in this audit. There were a couple circumstances under which those requirements were met. They just were not documented properly. And there are some that, you know, we missed the ball on, but there are some issues with being able to look at body worn and looking at the process, and the requirements were met. We just didn't translate that to the documentation as well as we should have, or just missed it altogether.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? Does anybody have at the table have anything to add? Okay, great. Then I would, go ahead.
I'm sorry, can we get a report back? This is really important. Can we get a report back, like once you start implementing, maybe like in 6 months, 10 months, I don't know?
So we've instituted monthly audits.
Yes.
So I would say, 6 months after inspection, we should see a significant improvement.
6 to 8 months, just to know that things are changing.
In the telephone advisements and the documentation to the watch commanders, those 2 categories.
Yes,
Okay.
please, thank you, that would be
Yes.
great.
Okay, so just December 2nd would be the due date for all the reports.
We
from
can talk about those dates
October.
specifically.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I would move that we adopt the recommendation for board action and approve the department's report. Is there a second?
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you for the report. Commission will now will now recess into closed session. Thank you very much.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess to closed session to discuss item numbers 5A1 and 5A2 in accordance with Government Code 54957.
The commission has concluded its closed session and will have a report out by Ms. Farber.
At the regular meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners on June 25th, 2024, during the closed session, the board made the following findings by a 3-0 vote. OIS number 034-23 for tactics, tactical debrief, 1 police officer 3, 5 police officer 2s, 3 police officer 1s. For drawing, exhibiting, in policy, no further action, 1 police officer 3, 2 police officer 2s, 2 police officer 1s. For non-lethal use of force, in policy, no further action, 5 police officer 2s, 2 police officer 1s. For less lethal use of force, in policy, no further action, 1 police officer 3. For lethal use of force, in policy, no further action, 1 police officer 1. Also, at the board made the following findings by a 3-0 vote. Non-tactical unintentional discharge number 036-23 for tactics, tactical debrief, 1 police officer 3. Unintentional discharge, administrative disapproval, 1 police officer 3.
Thank you. With that, I would move the meeting be adjourned. Is there a second?
I second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.